Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going to be going out into Enchanted Lands. We're going to be looking at beautiful scenery like forests and streams, and we're going to see some animals like foxes. Today we're going to be taking a look at Atlas Enchanted Lands. This is from Renegade Game Studios. It's for 2 to 4 players and it's a prediction card game. Today I'm going to be doing a rules school, so we're going to teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to spend time in the rule book. Well, let's get started and I'll see you on the other side. Atlas Enchanted Lands is a prediction card game for 2 to 4 players, where you'll be playing cards in order of the same suit and you'll be possibly predicting which way this is going to score. When predicting time, you're hoping that a card comes in that allows at least 4 in a row to happen, which allows you to score this at the end of the game. You'll also be trying to predict when 4 cards of a column will be there by saying it's going to be a place. And if it does happen, then anybody that suggested time on that spot is going to lose their tokens. This game's all about being correct and leaving your correct tokens there for scoring at the end. You'll be looking at the 7 cards in your hand and trying to figure out when is the right time to play them and when is the right time to predict with them. To set up, first each player is going to select a color and take chips of that color. If you're playing with a 2-player game, you'll take all of the chips, that is all 16 of them. If you're playing with 3 players, you'll take only 14 of the chips, and if you're playing with 4 players, you'll take only 12 of the chips. Any chips not used can be placed back in the box. Next, we'll set up the deck. If you're playing with 2 or 3 players, you'll find the 4 cards that have the number 8 on them. You'll take them out and you'll remove them from the game, place them in the box, they won't be used. You'll then shuffle this deck up. If you're playing with 4 players, these cards do not need to be pulled out. Essentially, you'll have the full deck, you will just shuffle this deck. And again, this is only for 4 players, but after you shuffle that deck, you'll reveal the top 2 cards. You're looking to see if the top 2 cards have different numbers, which in this case they do, 2 and 6, and different suits, which they do because there's different icons here. If that's true, you'll take these 2 cards, place them off to the side for now. We're going to teach you how to place these to start the game in just a moment. However, if either of these cards have the same suit or number, take one of them, shuffle it back in, and keep doing this until you just have 2 cards that have different numbers and different suits, and then place them off to the side. You'll then deal out 7 cards to each player, which will always be kept secret from the other players. Next, you're going to remove a certain amount of cards from the deck depending on the amount of players. If you're playing with 2 or 4 players, you'll remove 2 cards from this deck, place them in the box without looking at them, they're out of the game. If you're playing with 3 players, you would remove just 1 of these cards in the same fashion. Next, you'll set aside this draw pile where everyone can reach it. Note, in a 4-player game, there won't be a draw pile because all of the cards will either be in the player's hands or have been removed to the box. Now I place the draw deck off to the side like this. You're going to take the 4 large suit tokens, and here you're going to place them in a specific order. This is dawn, it's going to be on the top. Then there is day, then there is sunset, and then there is night. You're going to place them in that order. If you're playing with 2 or 3 players, you're ready to get started. If you're playing the 4-player game, if you remember, there's 2 cards that we asked you to set aside during the setup. You're now going to place them out. What you're going to do is find the row that has the same suit. In this case, it's sunset. And you're going to put them numerically. Think of columns from 1, 2, 3 going up to the left. And here we have column 1. It's empty because we're placing this in column 2. If you'd like to use for measurement, you can take one of the cards that's in the deck and use this as measuring as to how many cards over you should put that. So for example, that's the 2nd card of sunset. And in the upper right corner, you can see I placed the 6 of dawn. Again, this whole column is going to be reserved for 6s, 5s, 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. And on the right is going to be even larger numbers. Now we're ready to play. The object of the game is to get points by correctly betting what's going to happen throughout the game. For example, the red player here bet that time was going to happen, which means at least 4 consecutive numbers in this row was going to get played. And if this card gets played, we have at least 4, and then this player is going to end up getting points at the end of the game. You'll also be able to get points by betting on place, like having a certain amount of cards in the same column. The flow of the game has you playing one card and then, if possible, draw back up to your 7 cards, remembering that in a 4-player game you won't be drawing cards. So when you play a card, you must play it in the right spot on the board. And again, the spots are, you have to go to the right row, and the row is denoted by the suit, and the right column is denoted by the numbers. All of the columns go from 1 to possibly 8. So in this case, this player is going to play this. There's a 2, then they've got to leave room for a 3 and a 4, and there's a 5. Now, after you've done that, if this card doesn't score, which we'll go over later, this one does not, you can bet on the very card that you just placed and only that card. You can bet up to 5 of your chips, and you can bet either on time, saying that it's going to, you think this row is going to have 4 consecutive numbers, or you can bid on place, which essentially you think there's going to be a large column here. We'll go over that scoring a little bit later. But in this case, this player thinks that there's going to be 4 consecutive numbers here before these cards sort of get flipped over. So that player bids, they draw back up 1 card, and it's the next player's turn. So we've fast forwarded here just a little bit. The blue player had played here, and they bet that place was going to happen. We'll go over that in just a minute. But let's say the next player plays this. It's probably the red player. And we have at least 4 in a row here. Now, you cannot bid on this because it's about to score. Anytime anything scores, you cannot place a token on it. Now, this is going to score, which means all of these cards are going to get flipped over. Now, the red tokens, which are correct, they bet on time, stay. The blue place tokens were betting on the place, and since it was incorrect, these get removed from the game. The player does not get these back. Here's another example of time using skipped cards. Let's say a player plays this. We have 1, 2, 3, skipping any face down cards, and 4. Because there's at least 4, this is correct, these would flip and the time would stay here. If even this was gone, it does not flip over this, and so this would not score time at this point. Here's another example of a time score. If someone plays this, it goes 2, skips over, 4, skips over, 6, 7, there's 4, there's no empty spots, it skips over the down cards, even if it's every other one, and this would score, these would all get flipped, and those would stay there. And so it would look just like that. Let's say in the future, the board looks like this. We have 2 cards in the same column, and let's say our player plays this. Now, if when a card is played, if there are all 4 face-up cards in a column, that's known as place. Also, in this case, we see 1 is flipped over. If there's 3 face-up and 1 face-down, it's still considered scoring for place. So in this case, these would all get flipped over, the red tokens would stay, and the blue tokens would go away because they incorrectly were saying time on that card. And so afterwards, it would look something like this. Sometimes both place and time can score at the same time. If this card is played, this will flip all these cards over because it is place and this player was correct, but it also does time. 1, 2, 3, skips all face down, 4, and so time would go. So all these cards would flip over, this would stay, all these cards would flip over, and that would stay. And so afterwards it would look something like that. So this continues. You play a card, if it doesn't score you bet, and then you draw a card if there's a deck available, going to the next player, until the game ends. And it ends as soon as all the cards run out and nobody can play any more cards. Now remember, there'll be between 1 and 2 cards not available because they're taken out at the beginning of the game. So the game might have ended right now with these 2 spots open. Then you go to final scoring. Each player is going to count up the number of tokens still on the board. Remember, they only stay if they were correctly predicted. Now, you'd count the amount of tokens, 1, 2, 3, for example, 4, 5, 6, 7. You also get 1 point for each stack. So it was 8, 9, 10. We had 7 tokens plus 3 stacks, that's 10 points. You would add them up like that, whoever has the most is the winner. If there's a tie, the one who has the most stacks is the winner. If it's still tied, play again. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into the game without having to read the rule book, get you to the fun quicker. And if you have more questions about the rules, I'm going to put a link in the description of the video. Go ahead and place your questions there. This is a great location because not only will I see them and be able to respond to them, but so will the publisher.